The Pacific was black that night. Not blue, not silver, not romantic, just black. On the evening of November 28, 1981, Natalie Wood boarded the 60-foot yacht Splendour with her husband, actor Robert Wagner, also aboard her Brainstorm co-star Christopher Walken, and the vessel's captain, Dennis Davern. The group had spent part of the day in Avalon Harbor on Catalina Island. They dined ashore, they drank, they returned to the boat. By early morning, Natalie Wood was gone. She was 43 years old. Hollywood had introduced her to the world as a child, luminous, controlled, marketable. By the time she reached adulthood, she had starred in Rebel, Without a Cause, West Side Story, and Splendour in the Grass. She had been nominated for 3 Academy Awards. She had survived studio pressure, tabloid scrutiny, and the strange machinery that reshapes children into icons. But that machinery could not script what happened after midnight. The timeline, as reconstructed through law enforcement records and witness accounts, begins with dinner on shore. According to statements later provided to investigators, the evening included alcohol and conversation that turned tense. Accounts differ on tone and intensity, but Captain Davern would later claim there had been an argument between Wood and Wagner, reportedly involving jealousy over her professional relationship with Walken. Robert has denied any violent confrontation and has consistently maintained that Wood must have left the cabin on her own. Shortly after midnight, the group returned to the yacht anchored off Catalina. At some point in the early hours of November 29th, Wood was no longer aboard. No one reported hearing a scream. Her absence was not immediately treated as an emergency. At approximately 8 a.m., her body was discovered about a mile from the yacht. She was wearing a red down jacket, a flannel nightgown, socks. A small inflatable dinghy belonging to the Splendour was found beached nearby. Authorities theorized that she may have attempted to retie or board the dinghy and slipped into the water. The Los Angeles County coroner ruled her death an accidental drowning. Case closed, except it never really closed. Water had long unsettled Natalie Wood. Friends and family later described her discomfort around deep water. She had nearly drowned as a child during filming. Whether superstition or coincidence, the detail attached itself to the public imagination. It created narrative symmetry, and symmetry is dangerous in tragedy because it tempts interpretation. Still, the facts remain the anchor. The autopsy report documented fresh bruises on her arms and legs. The coroner at the time concluded they were consistent with accidental impact against the dinghy or while entering the water. There was no evidence of foul play determined during the initial investigation. Toxicology reports indicated alcohol was present in her system, along with medication. Yet even in 1981, inconsistencies lingered. Why would someone reportedly afraid of dark water leave a secured yacht in the middle of the night wearing sleepwear? Why would the absence not immediately trigger a search? Why were certain details, such as the reported argument, minimized in early reporting? For decades, those questions drifted just beneath the surface. Then, in 2011, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department reopened the case after Captain Davern publicly stated he believed investigators had not fully examined what occurred on board. In 2012, the coroner amended Wood's cause of death to drowning and other undetermined factors, citing the bruising and the inability to determine how she entered the water. In 2018, Robert was named a person of interest. He has denied wrongdoing and has not been charged with any crime. Walken has never been considered a suspect and has cooperated with authorities. No prosecution has followed. Legally, the case remains unresolved. Before she was floating in dark Pacific water, she was a little girl under hot studio lights. She was born Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko in 1938 to Russian immigrant parents. Her mother, Maria, wanted fame more than oxygen. That's not exaggeration. Maria believed her daughter was destined for stardom. She pushed, she hovered, she maneuvered. There's a story, widely repeated, that a fortune teller once told Maria her daughter would be great, but would die in dark water. Whether that moment happened exactly that way almost doesn't matter. Maria believed it. And when a parent believes something that hard, it shapes a household. Natalie didn't grow up normal. She grew up auditioning. By age 4, she was already appearing in small film roles. By 8, she landed the part that made America fall in love with her. Susan Walker in Miracle on 34th Street. The performance didn't feel like a child acting. It felt precise, controlled. Watch her face in that movie. The restraint is eerie. She wasn't cute chaos. She was composed, like she already understood the assignment. Charm them, don't break character, don't disappoint. That kind of control doesn't come from nowhere. Hollywood in the 1940s wasn't built to protect children. It was built to manufacture them. Natalie was coached on how to speak, how to pose, how to be gracious in interviews. Studio heads saw marketability. Her mother saw validation. And Natalie learned something early. Approval equals safety. By the time she hit adolescence, the industry had shifted her from child roles to something more complicated. Teen girl, object of longing, emotional centerpiece. Then came 1955, Rebel Without a Cause. She was 16. James Dean was 24. By today's standards, that age gap raises eyebrows. In 1950s Hollywood, it barely registered. Studios regularly paired teenage actresses with adult men and marketed it as romantic intensity. The movie itself was pure mid-century fracture, suburban discontent, parental disconnect, teenage ache. Natalie played Judy. She and James Dean had intense chemistry while filming. They spent time together off-set, and there was emotional closeness. But credible biographies and production accounts do not confirm a sustained romantic relationship. It's important to understand the era. In the 1950s, Hollywood often sexualized teenage actresses under the language of coming of age. It wasn't explicit, it was coded, soft focus, suggestive camera angles, emotional intensity standing in for physicality. Wood received her first Academy Award nomination for Rebel at only 17 years old. That legitimized her as a serious actress. But it also placed her in a transitional category. No longer the little girl from Miracle on 34th Street, not yet a fully adult star. And that in-between space is where Hollywood starts testing boundaries. But let's stop for a second and go further back to the day that little 10-year-old Natalie met an 18-year-old Robert Wagner. It happened at a Hollywood studio Christmas party. Wagner was 18, already a contract player at 20th Century Fox. She had a crush on him. He was older, handsome, polished, exactly the kind of leading man a young girl in Hollywood would notice. Fast forward to the mid-1950s. By 1956, Natalie was no longer a child star. She was a serious actress. She was 18, Wagner was 26. They reconnected through Hollywood circles, industry events, mutual acquaintances, and the same studio ecosystem. This time, it wasn't a little girl crush. It moved quickly. The press loved it. Two photogenic young stars, both rising, both glamorous. The pairing made visual sense. He was suave, steady, all-American leading man. She was luminous, emotionally expressive, newly adult. They married on December 28, 1957 in Scottsdale, Arizona. She was 19, he was 27. It looked like a fairy tale, studio approved, perfectly photographed, youth, beauty, prestige. But beneath the gloss, both were navigating image and identity. Natalie had grown up under intense parental control and studio pressure. Wagner was building his own career momentum and reputation. The marriage symbolized adulthood for her, a clean break from childhood stardom. But what we now know about their first marriage, yes, they got married twice, is less fairy tale and more pressure cooker. She had grown up under relentless control, a mother who managed every audition, every appearance, every movement. Marriage was a declaration of independence, a shift from child star to wife. But emotionally, she was still a teenager in many ways. Friends later described Natalie as deeply romantic, sensitive, and craving reassurance. Robert, by contrast, was socially polished, careful with his image, and very aware of Hollywood politics. He knew how to navigate rooms. He understood reputation. In that first year, the gossip wasn't scandalous. There were already murmurs that she was more emotionally invested than he was. Nothing documented, just tone. And in Hollywood, tone spreads faster than facts. Here's the part that started tightening the lid, though, after the first year. Natalie's career didn't stall after marriage. It accelerated. By 1959, she was moving toward more serious roles. Studios were grooming her beyond ingenuous status. Directors saw depth. Robert's career, steady but not ascending at the same speed, that imbalance mattered. Male ego wasn't discussed openly, it was assumed. Industry insiders later suggested there was quiet friction about her rising prestige. She was no longer the cute bride. She was becoming formidable. And when one spouse becomes the center of attention in Hollywood, the other one feels it. This is where the gossip turned sharp, but still murky. Nothing public, nothing print. But whispers, that's pressure. On top of that, accounts from the era describe heavy socializing, alcohol, and Hollywood nightlife. Natalie, who had been controlled for most of her childhood, suddenly had freedom, and she used it. Some friends later suggested she struggled with insecurity in those years. Fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough. Robert was described as charming but emotionally contained. That mismatch doesn't explode immediately, it erodes. By 1960, the shine had dulled, not publicly. Publicly, they still looked immaculate. But behind the scenes, the dynamics had shifted in ways that mattered. Splendour in the Grass earns her another Academy Award nomination. Then West Side Story explodes worldwide. She is now officially one of the biggest actresses in America, not rising, not promising, established. Meanwhile, his film career had stalled. He would later find success on television, but in the early 60s, he wasn't operating at her level. Now we enter one of the more controversial pieces. For decades, rumors circulated that Natalie allegedly discovered Wagner in a compromising situation with another man in a hotel room. Different versions named different individuals. None of the stories were confirmed publicly at the time. There is no legal documentation proving this incident occurred exactly as described in gossip accounts. However, several later biographies reference a confrontation. Some sources claim Natalie was devastated. The couple separated soon after the alleged event. Wagner has denied these claims. No verified evidence has ever surfaced to confirm the specifics. But the rumor never disappeared, and it's often cited as a catalyst for the divorce. In 1962, they officially ended the marriage. The stated reason? Irreconcilable differences. Hollywood's favorite phrase when the real explanation is too volatile. Now, let's be very clear. What we just discussed, that is gossip. There is no verified evidence that Robert was gay. These stories largely originate from later biographies, secondhand accounts, and Hollywood whisper networks that thrived on scandal. And in the 1950s and 1960s, accusations of homosexuality could destroy a career overnight. That context matters. We have to separate rumor from record. Wagner has consistently denied the claims. No proof has ever surfaced. And repeating speculation as fact would be irresponsible. The first marriage lasted 4 years. They were young, famous, under relentless scrutiny, and navigating careers that were exploding in different directions. After the divorce, Natalie went on to marry British producer Richard Gregson. So, who was he? Gregson wasn't an actor. He wasn't a matinee idol. He was behind the camera, a respected film producer in the industry. He was older than Natalie, intellectual, connected, and part of a different world than Hollywood's glossy studio machine. They married in 1969. By then, Natalie was no naive starlet. She had already survived child stardom, a public marriage, press obsession, and the pressure of being labeled a sex symbol before she was even an adult. Gregson offered something different: stability, distance from Los Angeles, and a more serious creative environment. They split time between London and California. In 1970, Natalie gave birth to their daughter, Natasha Gregson, but the marriage deteriorated quickly. Accounts from biographies and interviews suggest the relationship became strained by jealousy, distance, and clashing temperaments. Natalie reportedly suspected Gregson of being unfaithful. By 1971, they separated. The divorce was finalized in 1972. Now, the harder question: was she drinking? Was she using drugs? There is credible documentation that Natalie struggled with alcohol throughout different periods of her adult life. Multiple biographies, including those by Suzanne Finstad and Gavin Lambert, describe cycles of heavy drinking, particularly during times of emotional stress. Alcohol appears to have been the primary issue. Those who worked with her in the late 1960s and early 1970s describe her as deeply sensitive, prone to anxiety, and sometimes using alcohol to cope, especially when relationships felt unstable. It's also important to remember something contextual. Natalie had a lifelong documented fear of dark water, which is due to the fact that she nearly drowned as a child during the filming of The Green Promise, 1949. Crew members later said she was terrified of open water and could not swim well. Anxiety plus alcohol is not a good combination. Natalie Wood's divorce from Richard Gregson was finalized in 1972, and that same year she remarried Robert Wagner. The turnaround was fast. By the time her marriage to Gregson formally ended, both Natalie and Wagner were single again, and within months they were back together. On paper, it looked sudden. In reality, the emotional thread between them had likely never been cut. In 1974, Natalie and Robert Wagner had a daughter together, Courtney Wagner. Natalie also raised Natasha, her daughter, with Richard Gregson within their home. By most accounts, she leaned hard into motherhood during the mid-1970s. She stepped back from the relentless pace of film work and focused on family life. Outwardly, the second marriage looked calmer than the first. There were no public scandals, no explosive press conferences, no highly publicized separations. Friends described their second attempt as more mature. They had both aged, both been married to other people, both understood the cost of divorce under a microscope. That doesn't mean it was flawless. Biographies suggest there were still arguments, still jealousy at times, still drinking, particularly on Natalie's part during periods of stress. But compared to the volatility of the early 1960s, this chapter appeared steadier. They bought a home, they entertained, they vacationed, they were photographed smiling. For nearly a decade, there was no public unraveling. Then, in November 1981, during a Thanksgiving weekend trip aboard their yacht off Catalina Island with actor Christopher Walken present, everything shifted. Up until that night, the narrative was reconciliation, family, second chances. After that night, the narrative became suspicion, conflicting statements, and one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. So let's take a look at November 28, 1981. Natalie Wood was in the middle of filming Brainstorm with Christopher Walken. It was Thanksgiving weekend, and she and Robert Wagner were spending time aboard their yacht, the Splendour, anchored near Santa Catalina Island. Walken was invited to join them for the weekend. That part is not mysterious. Co-stars socialized. They were working closely together. It wasn't unusual. That evening, the three of them, along with the captain, Dennis Davern, went ashore for dinner at Doug's Harbor Reef restaurant. Witnesses later said the mood at dinner seemed normal. There was drinking, nothing outwardly explosive. They returned to the yacht later that night. This is where accounts begin to diverge. According to Captain Davern's later statements, an argument broke out between Wagner and Walken once they were back on board. He claimed the argument centered around Natalie's career, specifically how much she wanted to continue acting and how close she and Walken had become during filming. Davern described Wagner as jealous, heated, angry. Wagner has acknowledged there was an argument, but has consistently downplayed it. He has said it was a discussion about career plans, not a physical altercation, and that it eventually subsided. What is consistent across accounts? There was alcohol involved, voices were raised, Natalie was present during the tension. At some point, Natalie left the main cabin. There is no confirmed witness who saw her enter the water. No one admits seeing her board the dinghy. No one can definitively state the exact time she disappeared, the next known moment. Around 1:30 a.m., Robert noticed she was gone. The dinghy tied to the yacht was also missing. Hours later, her body was found floating about a mile away. But in that window, between the argument and her disappearance, no one gives a fully aligned story. And that single gap in time is what has fueled 4 decades of suspicion. Here are the main theories about what happened that night, and I am stripping them of drama, separating them by evidence, and laying them out clearly. First theory, it was an accidental drowning. After the argument, Natalie went to secure the inflatable dinghy because it was banging against the side of the yacht. She may have tried to retie it or board it. She slipped, fell into the water, and couldn't get back onto the boat. Supporting points, the dinghy was found adrift. She had been drinking. It was dark. She was wearing a heavy jacket, socks, and a nightgown, clothing that would weigh someone down quickly in cold water. The water temperature was in the low 60s. Counterpoints are, she reportedly had a lifelong fear of water. She was not a strong swimmer. Bruises were found on her body, though the coroner originally did not deem them consistent with foul play. In 1981, this explanation closed the case. The second theory suggests escalation, or foul play. In 2011, the case was reopened. In 2012, the cause of death was amended to drowning and other undetermined factors. Captain Davern later claimed the argument was more intense than originally described. He believed Wagner knew more than he initially said. In 2018, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department named Robert Wagner a person of interest. Important. Being a person of interest is not the same as being charged. Questions fueling this theory. Bruises on her arms and knee were later described as possibly consistent with being pushed or grabbed. Why was there no immediate widespread search? Why would she leave alone in the dark? There is no direct evidence proving a physical altercation led to her death. No witnesses saw her being pushed. Theory 3 is that some speculate Natalie may have tried to leave the yacht after the argument, not to secure the dinghy, but to remove herself from the situation. She boarded the dinghy to get away, possibly intending to go ashore or calm down, and fell in during the attempt. This blends accident with emotional distress. Supporting points. There was documented tension that night. Alcohol lowers judgment. The dinghy was untied. Counterpoint? Again, fear of water. Would she voluntarily get into a small inflatable boat at night? The last theory is one that usually drifts toward speculation, involving Christopher Walken. There is no evidence Walken harmed her. He has never been named a suspect. He has consistently said he went to bed after the argument and did not see her again. Law enforcement has not indicated evidence implicating him. This theory largely exists because he was present, not because of documented proof. Natalie Wood's blood alcohol level was reported at 0.14%, which is well above the legal driving limit of 0.08% and indicates significant intoxication. For a woman of her size, around 115 to 120 pounds, that could equate to roughly 4 to 6 standard drinks consumed over a couple of hours depending on food intake and metabolism. At that level, balance, coordination, reaction time, and judgment are all noticeably impaired. It doesn't automatically mean blackout, but it does mean reduced physical control and heightened emotional reactivity. Combined with nighttime conditions, cold Pacific water, heavy clothing, and a small amount of medication also found in her system, that level of intoxication would have substantially increased the risk of an accidental fall and drowning. What this most likely is, based strictly on available evidence, is a drowning that occurred in the middle of emotional tension and alcohol impairment, with unanswered questions layered on top. There is no definitive proof of homicide. There is also no clean, airtight narrative that eliminates doubt. The physical evidence confirms drowning. The toxicology confirms intoxication. The night confirms there was an argument. What we do not have is a clear sequence of events between that argument and the moment she entered the water. That gap is everything. If this were a simple accident with consistent statements, the story would have faded decades ago. If there were hard proof of murder, there would have been charges. Instead, we have inconsistencies. We have changed rulings. We have a person of interest designation decades later. We have a captain who revised his story. We have bruising that can be interpreted multiple ways. And we have a woman who was reportedly afraid of water, found alone in it at night. It endures because it sits in the worst possible place, not proven accident, not proven homicide, not resolved. And when a case lives in that gray space, especially when it involves fame, jealousy, alcohol, and a yacht off Catalina, it never stops echoing. The mystery survives, not because there's dramatic evidence, but because there isn't enough. In the years since, Walken has largely declined to discuss the incident in detail, maintaining that it was a tragic accident and that he was not involved in whatever happened between Natalie and Robert that night. Robert has consistently denied any wrongdoing in Natalie Wood's death and has never been charged with a crime. In 2018, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department publicly named him a person of interest, but no arrest has followed. Wagner continued acting for decades after her death and later married actress Jill St. John in 1990. Now in his 90s, he lives a largely private life, rarely giving interviews about the case, and has maintained that Natalie's death was a tragic accident. Natalie had 3 daughters connected to her marriages. Natasha Gregson Wagner, born 1970, was her daughter with Richard Gregson and was later adopted by Robert Wagner after he and Natalie remarried. Courtney Wagner, born 1974, was Natalie and Wagner's biological daughter together. Wagner also had a daughter from a previous marriage, Katie Wagner, from his relationship with actress Marion Marshall. Today, Natasha is an actress and producer and has spoken publicly about her mother, including producing the HBO documentary Natalie Wood, What Remains Behind. Courtney has lived a more private life, but has also defended her father publicly. All of the children have, in different ways, navigated growing up under the shadow of one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. Before we close, this matters. This episode is based on publicly available records, coroner reports, law enforcement statements, and reputable biographies. Allegations discussed remain allegations. No one has been convicted in connection with Natalie Wood's death. Speculation exists, but speculation is not proof. The case remains officially classified as drowning with undetermined factors, and that's the part that lingers. Not a verdict, not closure, not certainty. Hollywood loves a clean ending. This one never got one. Because sometimes the crime isn't proven. Sometimes the story lives in the gray. If this episode challenged you, made you question the official narrative, or made you look at Hollywood differently, follow the show, rate it, and share it. Because the past isn't dead, it's just what lies beneath the dark water.